Okay, I'm going to start right away because there's only half an hour, so there won't be that much time. How many, raise your hand if you're familiar with the Agile Fluency Model. I just want to get a feel for who's heard of it. So very small number, maybe like 4 or 5 people. Okay, cool. So raise your hand if you have tried to learn a second language. So not like if you were born where you learned one, but where you had to kind of when you were older. Okay, is there like a particular language that everyone learns around here?
German.
German? French? Okay. I'm from Canada, so everyone learns French pretty much. Okay, so what I want you to think about is can you tell that someone is fluent in a language? Right? So like you say, oh, you passed French 30 honors, but are they fluent in the language? How do you tell?
Also, they think in that language.
Huh?
Also, they think in that language.
Oh, okay, but how would you detect it, though? How would you detect it?
Accent.
Accent, yes?
You tell or understand jokes in the language.
Jokes, right? Yeah?
Yeah, understanding idiom.
Idiom, okay?
Pausing before talking.
What's that?
Pausing before talking.
Pausing before talking? Oh, if they don't pause, they're fluent? Yeah, okay. Well, they could be thoughtful. Or they're intelligent. Okay, so we know that even though we know there's a distinction between learning a spoken language and being fluent in that language, right? So we wouldn't say that, hey, you took these courses, therefore you're fluent, and I can throw you into another country and you'll be fine, because we know there's a big difference between that. It's not the same. So what we're trying to talk about here is how, if we think about Agile as a similar sort of skill that you become proficient in, and you have this kind of level where you know about it and a level where you're proficient and fluent, how could you tell? So how could I tell whether a team or an organization is fluent in Agile? So the way I put it is, it's not like you can put a few sentences together, but you're fluent, right? So like a few sentences in Agile, like, oh yeah, you can hold a stand-up and you can do this thing, but you're not fluent. You just can't deal with any real problem. You just kind of put together a good show. I suppose if someone asked you, you could fake being fluent as long as they don't look too closely. Okay, so a model that was introduced, actually I don't remember when, it was a few years, 2012, so only a couple years ago, is called the Agile Fluency Model. This is by 2 people, James Shore and Diana Larson, sorry. So they've been in the community for quite a while. James Shore wrote a book called Art of Agile Development. He's been in the game for quite a while. He also does like podcasts and stuff. Diana Larson, I think she was co-author on the Agile Retrospectives book and some other stuff, and she's been around for a while. So they said, okay, when we look at organizations or teams at different levels of proficiency, we notice a pattern, right? And this is what they put up. Here's this model that indicates what we see the levels of kind of capability that teams tend to go through. And then you say, okay, let's call that the Agile Fluency Model. Okay, so how many people attended the Jobs to be Done session in the morning? What, nobody? Okay, you should have. That was probably the essential topic to learn about, but you didn't learn, so too bad. Okay, so the key thing that I want to pull from that is that it's important when you look at a product or service, understand the job that people are hiring it to do, right? So when we buy a product, we buy a service, we are trying to accomplish something. We're doing an activity, we're trying to accomplish a goal. We have a job, and we are hiring that product. If I want someone to switch from a product to my product, I have to do that job better than the previous one. But I can't work that out until I understand what am I trying to achieve as a job. So I'm going to talk about this fluency model in terms of what jobs do we hire Agile to do. So if I'm a team or an organization, what am I trying to accomplish? And therefore, I'm trying to use Agile as a thing that I'm going to accomplish that job. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, so, and I'm going to use this to highlight why they have those fluency levels, because they are talking about different types of jobs. Okay, so the first job is creating transparency and alignment. So this is the very typical statements I hear from the clients I deal with. People say things to teams. They say, we don't know what you're doing. Right? How many people have heard that? If you talk to like portfolio managers or usually senior managers, that's what they say. Well, I have no idea what you're doing. Yeah, that's if they're polite, they'll say that. Okay, so, or they'll say something along the lines of, why are you doing that? So that is indicating a problem of they can't understand or see what's going on, which usually typically undermines the level of trust you have in that relationship, and that typically leads to dysfunction. So the first job that we're hiring Agile to do is to solve that problem. So we say, I'm going to try to create transparency and alignment, which means people stop asking about what they're doing. They know what we're doing. They know why we're doing things, and that helps build the trust. Okay, so that's job number one. Okay, and that's also fluency level number one. The next job is deliver reliably and more frequently. Okay, so this is the one I also hear quite a bit of, is like one of the first things we do engage in a client, I'll say, oh, okay, so why did you ask us to come here and look at your stuff? And they say, oh, well, my IT department, my development teams, they're too slow, they're too expensive, and they have poor quality. I usually say, hey, are they good at any of them? And they say, no, it's all garbage. Okay, so, and then you go, okay, so if I want to solve that problem, I want to fix that job, then I'm trying to say, okay, if I deliver more reliably, more frequently, then that'll solve that problem. Okay, I'm hiring Agile to accomplish that for me. Okay, that's job number two, which is also the 2-star fluency. The third job is building better products and services. So this, I'm kind of making the statement from the perspective of the delivery team that has a problem. You could also look at it from the person who's looking at the delivery team, but I figure I'll kind of look at the fluency model as a product that the delivery team is hiring to improve itself. So the problem they're facing is someone will say, okay, I have a product strategy session and the delivery team doesn't get invited to attend it. How many people have encountered this one, right? So anyone who's on. So you say, hey, I'm building the product, and the product strategist say, yeah, you're building a product, but I don't want you anywhere near about where the product's going to go because I don't trust you to deal with that type of question, right? And that's just indicating of the kind of level of trust that's there. They don't trust you to deal with the product. So this kind of 3-star level is when if it's successful, it allows that delivery team to be engaged in those things because you are part of the process of building better products and services. Okay, that's job number 3, which is also fluency level number 3. And finally, the last job is building an organization that systemically supports all of the previous things. So, which is the building better products and services, delivering reliably and frequently, and having transparency and alignment. Okay, so just because I might have that for a single team doesn't mean I have that for all the teams and all the various things happening in my large organization. So I need to have that as well. Again, it's kind of like a version of the previous statement I had there where I don't get invited to product strategy sessions. I might not get invited to business strategy sessions. So they say, oh, we're having some offsite to talk about the direction of the organization. And they say, yeah, you just keep doing your thing because you don't need to be involved in this discussion, right? So you're just not invited to the table. Usually when we're talking about this, this is at the kind of CIO level type stuff. There's a few organizations I've been to where the CIOs get demoted below the executive level. I don't know if you've been in places like that. But that's pretty much an indication where you're saying all you technology people are too stupid to deal with business issues, so we'll just demote you down and you don't get involved in the session. So this is talking about acquiring the sense, so people sense that you have the proficiency to deal with the things that an organization needs to deal with, not just product stuff, not just team stuff, not so much, all those other things. Okay, so I'm suggesting then that there are 4 jobs that we hire Agile to do, and they're at different levels, but and all of these jobs exist simultaneously. So even if we're only dealing with one because that's the level of influence we have, it's all happening at the same time. Now you could be in a situation where you don't have to deal with all of them in the sense that they do, your transparency and alignment is already there or whatever, but then that's where we say what level of proficiency, what level of fluency do you have, so your job is accomplished. I would suggest as well that it's very unlikely that you would be seen as proficient at, let's say, dealing with organizational issues and have a problem with product strategy, right? So if they invite you to deal with business strategy, it's not like they're not going to invite you to product strategy. Come on, right? It's at a lower level of capability. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay, so this is where, even though this kind of looks like a staged thing, It's not really. It's just more that, so it's not an order of execution. You don't do one, then the next thing. It's more that it's an order of difficulty. It's very unlikely that if you have, like people don't, if you don't have transparency, you don't have alignment, it's very unlikely you'll deliver frequently or reliably, or you could maybe do that, but it's unlikely that people would think that you should be involved in product strategy because they would say, what you're doing is so opaque, I'm not going to involve you in this stuff because I don't trust you. And same as the other things. So it's less an order of execution, more an order of difficulty. So if you look at the article about this, so if you just search for Agile Fluency Model, the article on it, they talk about this not being a maturity model. And the reason why they're saying that is that they're talking about that idea that you would go through order in terms of executing, and they're saying these are really like different aspects of the situation you need to deal with, right? So you may actually attempt to deal with them all at the same time. It's just you're very likely to complete them in a particular order, just because of difficulty. Okay, does that make sense? Sure, okay. So what I would like to do is just to get a better feel for this, before we get to more of an open dialogue, I'd like to get people to try to assess their own situation. Okay? So does everyone have a team that they can think of, at least, and have something to write on? Yes, good. Okay. Excellent. Okay, and obviously it's better to be honest rather than not. Okay, so when I've attempted to do this, what I try to do is turn this into an easier, more of a almost black and white kind of test for this, because what I've found is if you make it a little bit too wishy-washy, people tend to be a little bit more optimistic, and it's not useful in terms of their development. So I try to turn these things into almost like a single question that is difficult enough that if you don't do it, I'm going to guess you're probably not there. And if you do, it's a pretty good guess that you've done it. So let's say if you're a one-star team, and in the model they talk about one-star teams create business value. Question number one is, do you regularly report progress from a business value perspective? Okay, so what I mean by that is, as I mentioned before, there is no instance of someone saying, I wonder what they're doing. You've removed that phenomenon. So that job is done. Okay? And of course, I'm assuming honest, actual progress. So I can get people to say, oh, I know what they're doing, and you're just lying to them, so it's not what you're doing, but they believe, and that's not what we're looking for. So they say, I don't know, I know what they're doing, and I'm not being suckered, so it's actually what they're doing. Okay, so actually we can do a hand raise. So raise your hand if you say, okay, my team, I can honestly say that all my customers, they can say, yeah, I know what they're doing. Okay, I'm going to assume most of you are lying, but anyway. Okay? Yeah, I say that because of experience. Okay, so anyway, number two, two-star team, so deliver on market cadence. So do you ship reliable software at the pace of the market? So what does at the pace of the market mean? It means that whatever industry you're in, there will be a pace, right? So this is what you need to be able to compete. It's the rate at which both the rate at which customers can absorb and the rate at which your competitors will kind of encourage the customers to absorb. So as fast as your market can absorb. So as an example, if I was like competing against Amazon, I'm screwed, but it's like whatever 0.0006 seconds between releases or something, that's the pace. But if I'm against like let's say a very slow market, I don't know. Who's in a slow market actually? What kind of pace?
About 3 months is slightly enough for customers.
Okay, yeah, so let's say 3 months, right? But let's say 3 months is like your customers are going, wow, that's fast, right? And that's as fast as I can take it, right? Then you're at competitive pace. Okay, now you may try to manipulate that pace to try to get the customers to accept faster to kill the competitors. That's a little bit more advanced here, but generally that's all we're saying. Can you release as fast as your market can absorb, which means that additional speed gives you no advantage. Okay? So raise your hand if your team is at that rate. Okay. This one's harder. This one is definitely harder and also gets more sophisticated because, as I said, you can start to manipulate this. Like normally if I go, that's a market pace, and I'll also be thinking, well, if I make it faster and I know the other people can't do it and I can get the customers to absorb it, I've essentially killed the other people because now I'm inside their loop. Okay, so, but roughly that's what this is about, okay? Notice, I haven't really said, I don't care if you're doing continuous delivery, I don't care if you're doing blah, blah, blah. I don't have to say it because you can't do this without those things, or you can come up with something else. But I don't need to mention it. I just say, can you do this or not? It's a very straightforward question. One of the conversations I had with this is when we were saying, hey, should we do this? Like, we'll write our test this way or write our test this way. I'm saying, we have to deliver at least twice a day. Can we do that if we do this? And saying, no, okay, well then we're not doing that. Right? It's very straightforward discussion. Yes?
So that product we make is internal, so there's no competitors in sort of market rate.
Yeah.
Use us.
As fast as your customers can absorb, whatever that might be. So yeah, again, like if it's internal, then you know, whatever that happens to be.
Does one of the following ones ask whether or not we're putting the right thing to the
Oh, thank you for asking that question. Wow, you're right on top of that one, right? Okay, so the next one, 3-star teams optimize their value. Now we're looking at outcome. Okay, so let's say I can get stuff out there as fast as the market requires, but am I competitive in the sense of outcome? Like, what do I put out there? Does it impact? Like, I'm using business metrics and KPIs just typically because organizations, that's how they talk about how they indicate outcome, but roughly we're really saying outcome. But if we're asking questions like this, I just say, hey, are you measuring that? Yeah?
So how is that different than the 1-star? Because if you're reporting progress against...
You know what I'm doing, it doesn't mean what I'm doing is right.
So the 1-star is here's what I've done.
Yes, so you don't, again, I'm removing the question, I don't get the question, I don't know what they're doing, I don't get that statement. I know what you're doing. Now, I could say, I know what you guys are doing, and it's very transparent, but we're not getting the outcome, right? That can still happen, right? Because what you need to do to get a good outcome, we start talking about lean startup, we start talking about jobs to be done, all that stuff. It's a lot more complicated, right? So what you need to do to create transparency could be stuff like the walls, you know, meetings, whatever. That's not the same thing as getting out of the building, running experience, controlled experiments, responding to feedback, all that. It's just another level of capability, okay? Okay, so that's what we were talking about here. Again, I don't mention that. I'm just saying that you need to do whatever it takes to get that outcome, right? So it isn't even enough to say, oh, we're doing lean startup. Are we 3-star? No, because I don't care that you passed French level 30 if you can't hold a conversation. Right? The thing, again, is you demonstrate fluency in that you can hit an outcome. Okay? Does that make sense? So raise your hand if your team, you are showing impact on these kind of concrete business metric KPIs. Okay, how many of you are product teams? What are the other people? What are you guys doing?
What was the question?
Do you show your impact on concrete business metrics and KPIs? Oh, the second one, are you a product team?
Right, yeah.
Okay, and then the second question with the people who aren't product teams, what are you doing?
Doing kind of little apps and host websites and stuff like that. So it's kind of
Kind of part of it, yeah, okay. Okay.
So IT services.
Okay. Cool.
And what do you do?
What are you saying? Would you like to share with the class?
I didn't bring it up for everybody. We're doing this. It doesn't always mean that the gauge is going the right way.
Oh, so here you go, here's like, this could still fail, right?
Yeah.
Because because this is like product strategy level, right? This might not make the business metrics KPIs that we're looking at, like at an organizational level, they could be incorrect, right?
No, they're probably the right KPIs, doesn't mean we're meeting them.
Then you're not fluent.
Right. Why?
Because you're not, again, like I'm saying is, there is, well, here's a bit of a thing, right? So you could fail at it for reasons that are not due to your capability. It's just because some of it is a bit random. The other one, if I'm strict enough, or I'm unfair enough, I'll just say I don't care. You had a difficult. So I said I'm going to get you. You need to go to some French store and buy something, and you weren't able to accomplish that. I don't care how bad of an accent that French owner had. Too bad, right? That was the test. Right? Like I say, hey, you weren't fluent enough for the situation we need, right? And sometimes it's not fair because like once you get into product strategy, business strategy, it's not fair, right? There's a lot of unpredictability there. But we'll go if we're going to say how do we detect? We could say that hey, in general, being a product team, are you fluent in the sense that most of the time you kind of work it out and you get the outcome, and sometimes you don't quite get it. You know, it's like when we're supposed to know English and some people can't spell to save their life. You know, they're still fluent. They just sometimes they misspell something or bad grammar or whatever. Right, so we can accommodate
It skips
that.
over the idea of portfolio investment, doesn't it?
Huh?
So the idea of portfolio investment. Some things you're sure are going to work, some things you're unsure are going to work.
Yeah, and but if we use it from a language, like saying language fluency, just because I'm fluent in English doesn't mean I can put up a scenario that I can't handle, right? Like so, a much more complicated writing assignment, writing a I say long form novel. How many people can handle that, right? You could say you're fluent, but that's just hard.
This question is wrong, I reckon.
Okay.
You say, are you meeting your KPIs? Is what you, yeah.
No, do you show impact on them?
So this is
Right here, we're also saying like if I'm more fair, and I say you don't need to actually accomplish it. You just need to be operating in the sense that you always tie things to this, and you can demonstrate that.
Yeah.
Right now, you're playing that game now, right? I know because one of the problems I was saying, the job I'm trying to solve is the one where you are not invited to product strategy sessions. Now, if you are engaging with this, you are, because that's what they're doing. They're looking at products and saying, how do I use this to achieve a particular impact? Because usually I have my KPIs tied to something coming out of that. And I need people who can think that way, who operate that way, who know how to affect that. Now, if you're not doing that, and you're just talking about, oh, I've set up continuous delivery, or I'm delivering faster, or I have these card walls that go, you're not talking about anything I care about. Okay?
Can I just clarify? So this is every feature that you develop or release should have improvement. It has a negative effect. You should see that very quickly. That's what I'm getting from this, right?
Yeah, like we can get into details of how you'd actually do it, but I'm just saying if we want to keep it a little bit higher level, right? So it's just more how do you engage
Example
people.
of that right now, actually. We've got a product, newish product, and it's profitable, and it's making a little bit of money, and the team are like investing and incrementing, but they're not, like the product strategy is like you're not doing the right thing, and there's a disconnect between the two, because the product strategy is to make the thing like massively pay off, right? Whereas it's like, just making a little bit more of the costs.
Yeah, that's where you got the disconnect.
Yeah, and the people in the delivery team think they're doing fine.
Yeah, and that's where I go. They're not at
Yeah.
this level. Like when they shift there, all of a sudden they will be part of that larger discussion, and that's where saying, okay, you understand French enough so that we can put you in our French debate. Right now we're talking about that. Okay. Okay. Last one. 4-star teams contribute to optimizing the system. So this is where you are now showing how your actions impact the overall organization. So these are the kind of discussions where you're talking, not just talking about your product, you're talking about how that impacts the overall organizational strategy. So like the larger business model, that kind of stuff, which may mean trade-offs that don't make sense at a single product level, but you're trying to optimize like a larger portfolio. Okay? So does that make sense? This can get very complicated, but.
So when you say 4-star,
I'm going to claim a bit of 4-star just for one of the things. Right?
What?
I'll claim a little.
You claim a little 4-star?
A little bit.
4-star.
Yeah, for a startup, but not for working in a big telecommunications company by day. But I was sort of thinking about the previous one, where the causality in the startup. You're trying, you've got it up and running.
Oh, if you're a startup, your product strategy is almost equivalent to your business strategy. You have a single product, right? So in that scenario, you say I have fluency for that context, where I'm covering both the organizational business optimization as well as the product, because I have a single product. When this obviously gets harder when you get to larger places because it is significantly more complicated.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay? So who, raise your hand if you say, okay, we're that. And you can say that because, hey, my quilt patching thing, that's one thing, or done, right?
I can change it, and the
No,
strategy changes.
the entire system's optimized. So let's see, all the world, which is me, is optimized. All the, yeah, it's like a, right? Yeah, that's what you're saying, right? It's like all the products are optimized, being one.
Yeah.
And, you know,
Our organisation is completely dysfunctional, and we contribute to that dysfunction.
You know, I'm see. Even though you say that, I'm skeptical, even for the dysfunctional ones, whether they can even show impact. Like I go, if even if you showed how you are undermining the entire organization, even if you showed that, I don't think you are doing that, right? I don't even think they're doing that, right? Because if they did, they would do something about it.
So Jason, where I work, a bunch of us, like from frontline workers to me, manager or developers, contribute to that, but not everyone does, right? So there's access to the information, but not everyone's actively participating.
Yeah, so this is why, like here, the fluency model was always targeting looking at a particular team. So you could say, is that team 4-star fluent in terms of how they engage the organization? This is not a statement, though, about how the organization, whether the organization is fluent. If you want to say, like, is an organization fluent, then you have to say, how many teams do I need to say that that's the case? And we can talk about that, right? I would say, like, the only reason why we use a model like this, again, it comes back to what job am I trying to do here? What am I trying to accomplish? It doesn't matter so much, I think, to say what star you're at. This is just a way to help you think about what am I trying to accomplish and what are critical things. And there is this level of difficulty that you want to go after. Okay, so I think there's recently been, people have been complaining about some of the Agile stuff's gotten a little too lax, right? And I get, if you get more specific on that, it's just that I would say that most people are taking that first job of transparency and alignment, and they're not taking the other jobs, which we have to do. I have to deal with the job where people don't trust the delivery. They don't see that you can contribute to product strategy. They see that you can't contribute to business strategy. Those are important jobs. They're much harder to deal with, but they're worth doing. And that's what this model is trying to remind us of that.
When you say team, do you mean like the whole team can't come along and sit at strategy meetings and things like that? Or is that what you mean? We
No.
mean representative of the
Representative usually, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are 3 minutes out. So does anyone have any other thoughts on this? I can talk about what how this actually plays out in practice. But. Okay, so in practice, I think it seems reasonable to do this, and everyone seems to understand the general concept. What I've currently, which is kind of odd, is they don't like talking about the Agile Fluency Model. They like talking about the contents of it. So I can't talk about the model anymore. I have to actually talk about the concept and not mention the model, which is weird. Because it means they never read the model or never understood me when I talk about the model, even though I'm saying the exact same thing, so I can't use the term. But the basic concept works because the problems are really what people are talking about.
So are you suggesting that it's sort of linear, that you go through those phases?
No, I would say it's very likely that's what you'll end up having that's what you'll end up completing. It's very difficult to have the trust to deal with business issues if they go, I can't even see what you're doing, I'm not going to invite you to this thing, you're just not, I don't believe you're trustworthy. So there is a level of difficulty. The thing that they talk about with the model is don't wait until you've finished your transparency alignment before you start working out how to engage, like understand product. Yes, of course. Some things but like there are stuff where he's saying start trying to understand product strategy and business strategy now if you want to get there. But obviously you won't get the influence or trust to be involved in that until you clean up some other things. Yes?
How much of this is business understanding what IT actually does as opposed to what IT reports?
Yeah, but that's, from this perspective, it's your job to create that understanding.
Well, of just understanding the reporting or actually?
Right, so if they go, I don't know what you're doing, we can't rely on the person who doesn't understand to work that out. You're going to have to say, I'm going to have to work out how to make them see what I'm doing. And then they'll say, oh, I don't understand what you're doing. So now you feel a little bit more trust. And then I'll go, oh, and now I can actually deliver reliably at the pace you need it. Oh, okay, these guys seem a little bit more. And then, okay, wow, they seem to be able to actually talk about what a product is for. Wow, okay, you can get involved, and so on and so forth. Okay, like that type of phenomena, I think, is stable. I'm not entirely sure whether the model, like a model as an Agile Fluency Model, it doesn't seem to get traction, especially as you go up the line, because the business people just don't care about the Agile Fluency.
One useful, I'm putting on my Agile coaching hat, not my startup hat here. One useful thing that I liked when I read the model was that the authors put some time spans on how long it would be it intends to take, if successful, to adopt. So to get to a certain level of fluency, which I sort of thought was helpful in terms of.
I'm generally, so I'm going to be cynical here. I'm going to say it's going to take a lot longer than you think.
Yeah.
And don't worry too much about how long it's supposed to take. Just assume it's going to be a never-ending slog.
Yeah.
And then you'll be pleasantly surprised if it's faster.
But it helps with the hope. If someone comes in and says we can get you to 3 stars in 3 months, then you know that they've got.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. That's what I mean. If that discussion of I'll get you to 3 stars in 3 months, I'm not seeing traction talking that way. I'm seeing traction if I talk about, okay, this is the problem and okay, we'll work through it and we should do this, because that's not a problem. The 3-star, 1-star thing, that doesn't seem to work.
Jim and Diana were trying to get this up as a workshop through a Kickstarter. Did they manage to get it up? Do you know?
Oh, I don't know. I don't think so. Yeah, they were trying to get people to fly to Portland or whatever. That's just a little bit expensive, especially for us. It's Portland. Jeez.
Thanks, Jason.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.